Between 1929 and 1933, roughly 25% of all Americans lost their jobs, over 9,000 banks collapsed, and entire nations fell into economic ruin from a financial disaster that spread like wildfire across continents. The crash was swift and merciless, but for those caught in its grip, life somehow continued in the shadow of economic devastation. Here's what life was really like during the Great Depression. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Alright, tonight it's the Great Depression, but before we go anywhere, get comfortable. Seriously, adjust those pillows, pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. Your eyes snap open to darkness. The room is ice cold. October in New York, 1929, and coal for heating is already being rationed in your building. Your stomach growls painfully, not like the mild hunger when you skip lunch. This is day 3 without a proper meal hunger, the kind that makes your body literally start to consume itself. You're not sleeping on the street, not yet, but the mattress beneath you is thin and lumpy. Nothing like your comfortable bed right now. Your apartment is small, but it's shelter. For how much longer though? That's the question keeping you up at night. 3 days ago you had a decent job at a factory. 3 days ago you had savings. 3 days ago the stock market was riding high and America was prosperous. Then came Black Thursday. The thing about economic disasters is they happen in slow motion and all at once. It's like watching a train wreck from inside the train. For years, people had been pouring money into stocks, borrowing cash to buy more stocks, using those stocks as collateral to borrow even more. It was basically a nationwide pyramid scheme, and on October 24th, 1929, the whole thing came crashing down. Extra, extra. The paperboy's voice cuts through the morning fog as you walk to the employment office. Stock market collapses, worst crash in history. You remember yesterday's scenes outside the New York Stock Exchange, men in expensive suits with blank expressions. The wealthy jumping from buildings isn't just a myth, it actually happened. Not in the numbers people imagine, but enough that ambulance crews were kept busy scraping the remains of once wealthy brokers off the pavement. Did you hear about George? One man whispers to another in the growing unemployment line. Lost everything. His wife found him in the garage with the car running. At least he had a car. The other man replies. The unemployment office is chaos. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, all fighting for the same few jobs. The man behind the counter looks exhausted, his eyes bloodshot. Nothing today, he tells you without looking up. Try again tomorrow. But tomorrow will be the same, and the day after, and the day after that. Wait, I need you to understand what this actually felt like. This wasn't just a bad day in the stock market. This was the entire economic system of the United States, the richest country on earth, completely collapsing. Imagine every financial certainty in your life vanishing overnight. The market will recover, the newspapers say. President Herbert Hoover makes reassuring statements. Prosperity is just around the corner, but you're not stupid. You can see the truth with your own eyes. On your way home, you pass a bank. There's a crowd outside, growing larger by the minute, people pounding on the locked doors, some crying, others shouting, a bank run. When people lose faith in banks, they all rush to withdraw their money at once. But here's the thing about banks in 1929. They don't keep all your money on hand. They lend it out. So when everyone wants their cash at the same time, the bank fails. They can't just keep our money, a woman screams, her face red with anger. That's my life savings in there. But they can, and they did. Between 1930 and 1933, nearly half of all American banks failed. If your money was in one of them, it was just gone. No FDIC insurance, no government bailout, just gone. You know what's really wild? Before the crash, the economy seemed unstoppable. The roaring 20s were exactly that. Roaring with excess, jazz, illegal booze during Prohibition, and money that seemed to multiply like magic in the stock market. 10 grand, your neighbor had boasted last month. Started with just $500 last year. The market only goes up, friend. Only goes up. He jumped from his 10th floor apartment 2 days after the crash. By evening, you're back in your apartment, counting the money you have left. $6.17. The rent is due in a week. $5. That leaves $1 and change for food to last. Well, until you find work, whenever that might be. You think about your parents back in Chicago. Could you move back home? The thought makes your stomach twist with shame. 30 years old and crawling back to your parents, but shame doesn't fill an empty stomach. On the street below, a commotion draws you to the window. A family is being evicted, their furniture, clothes, and personal belongings thrown carelessly onto the sidewalk. The mother is crying, clutching a baby to her chest. The father stands motionless, his expression blank with shock. 2 small children cling to their mother's skirt, confused and frightened. This scene is playing out all across America. By 1932, thousands of families will be evicted every day in major cities. The next morning, you join what people are starting to call a bread line. Hundreds of people waiting for free soup and a piece of bread from a charity kitchen. The line stretches around the block. You take your place at the end, swallowing your pride. This is survival now. "First time?" asks the man in front of you, not unkindly. You nod. "You'll get used to it," he says. "Was a bank manager myself before all this. Now look at me." He gestures to his threadbare coat and worn shoes. That's the thing about the Depression that's hard to understand now. It wasn't just the poor who suffered. The middle class was decimated. People who thought they were secure, professionals, managers, skilled workers, suddenly found themselves destitute. "The thing is," the former bank manager continues, "nobody's immune. I had customers, millionaires on paper, who lost everything in a day. One fella came in to withdraw $1 million. By the time we closed that afternoon, his stocks weren't worth the paper they were printed on." The soup, when you finally get it after 3 hours of waiting, is thin and flavorless. The bread is stale, but it's food. You wolf it down, trying not to think about when you'll eat again. Back in your apartment, you turn on the radio, one luxury you've maintained. President Hoover is speaking, assuring the nation that the economy is fundamentally sound, that prosperity will return. "He's full of shit," says your neighbor through the thin wall. "Sorry for the language," he adds, probably remembering your shared wall. "No, you're right," you call back. This casual conversation through the wall has become your main social interaction. "Got any coffee?" he asks. "Just the grounds from yesterday, already used them twice." "Bring 'em over, I'll show you how to get a 3rd cup out of them." And this is how people survived. Sharing, stretching, making do. Coffee grounds used multiple times. Soup made from ketchup and hot water. Clothing mended and remended until the original fabric was more patch than garment. The crazy part, the stores were full of food. The problem wasn't supply. It was that people had no money to buy anything. Farmers were destroying crops because prices had fallen so low it wasn't worth bringing them to market, while people in cities were starving. In Iowa, farmers poured milk onto highways rather than sell it for pennies. In California, oranges rotted in vast piles while children in New York developed diseases from malnutrition. It's one of history's cruelest ironies, starvation amidst plenty. The next day brings rumors that the stock market is recovering. People are hopeful again. Maybe this will all blow over quickly. Maybe Hoover is right about prosperity being just around the corner. You hear of a factory across town that might be hiring. You spend your precious pennies on a trolley fare, only to find hundreds of men already waiting when you arrive. Some have been there since dawn. They're taking applications, one man tells you, but they've got 20 spots and there must be 500 of us here. You wait anyway. What choice do you have? By noon, a factory foreman comes out. No more jobs today, he shouts. Try again next week. The crowd's disappointment is palpable, a wave of despair washing over hundreds of faces. Men turn away, shoulders slumped, shuffling back to wherever they came from. But one man doesn't move. That's it, he shouts. We wait all morning and that's it? The foreman ignores him, turning to go back inside. My kids are hungry, the man screams, his voice breaking. My kids haven't eaten in 2 days. Other men join in now, their voices rising in anger and desperation. For a moment, it feels like the crowd might rush the factory gates. There's a dangerous energy building, the kind that precedes violence. You back away. You've heard about riots breaking out in other cities, hungry, desperate people looting grocery stores and warehouses. You don't want to be part of that, but you understand it now. Hunger does things to people. It strips away civilization, reduces humans to their most basic instincts. Your own empty stomach has been teaching you this lesson. You find yourself walking past neighborhoods you'd never normally enter, the wealthy areas, the homes with lights still on, cars still in driveways, smoke still curling from chimneys, the people who survived the crash, or even profited from it, buying stocks at rock-bottom prices. The divide between rich and poor existed before the crash, but now it's a canyon, gaping and impossible to ignore. Here's something wild about economic depressions. They're not equal opportunity disasters. While millions were plunged into poverty, others barely noticed. The truly wealthy, old money, not the nouveau riche who gambled everything on stocks, continued much as before. Their servants might have accepted lower wages, their portfolios might have taken a hit, but they weren't standing in bread lines. Walking back to your apartment, you pass a Hooverville, one of the shanty towns springing up in cities across America, named mockingly after the president who seemed unable or unwilling to address the crisis. Makeshift shelters cobbled together from scrap wood, cardboard, tin sheets. Whatever people could find. Entire families living in conditions you wouldn't keep animals in. You wonder how many of those people had normal lives just weeks ago. 2 children play in the dirt outside one of the shacks, using sticks and rocks as toys. They're thin, their clothes dirty and too small, but they're laughing. Children adapt. Somehow they find joy even in the darkest circumstances. The next morning brings news that reverberates through the city like a thunderclap. The stock market, which had been recovering slightly, has crashed again. Any hope of a quick resolution to the crisis vanishes. You think about that neighbour who boasted of his market gains, the one who jumped. You understand him better now. A week passes, your rent comes due. The landlord, a man named Gianelli, who's always been fair in the past, knocks on your door. I know things are tough, he says, not meeting your eyes. But I got the bank breathing down my neck. If I don't collect, I lose the building. You hand over your $5, leaving yourself with just over $1 for how long? You don't know. Thanks, he says, pocketing the money. Then, unexpectedly, he pulls out a paper bag. My wife made extra stew, said to give it to you. The simple kindness brings tears to your eyes. You're too choked up to speak, so you just nod your thanks. That night, as you savor each bite of the stew, actual meat, vegetables, flavor, you listen to the radio. The news is spreading beyond America now. The economic disaster isn't contained. It's jumping borders, crossing oceans. In Germany, already struggling under the weight of war reparations from the Treaty of Versailles, banks are failing. In Britain, unemployment is soaring. The global economy is interconnected in ways people barely understood until it all began to unravel. You think about your job at the factory, making parts that were shipped overseas. The factory closed because orders dried up. Those orders dried up because companies in other countries were failing. Those companies were failing because their customers had no money. And round it goes, a perfect circle of economic destruction. The stew is gone too quickly. You use bread to wipe the bowl clean, not wasting a drop. Then you lie back on your bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what tomorrow will bring. Outside, the city that never sleeps has taken on a different rhythm. Not the frenetic energy of prosperity, but the restless stirring of worry, of hunger, of fear. In just a few short weeks, the world has changed completely, and the depression is only just beginning. What's happening in America is just the first tremor. The economic earthquake will soon shake the entire world, toppling governments, birthing extremist movements, redrawing the map of global power. In Germany, a political party that garnered only 2.6% of the vote in 1928 will soon find fertile ground for their message among the unemployed and desperate. Their leader, a failed artist with a talent for channeling anger, will rise on the tide of economic misery. In Britain, the pound sterling, once the world's most stable currency, will be forced off the gold standard, a humiliation for a nation that prided itself on financial strength. In Japan, military leaders will point to the economic crisis as proof that their nation must expand, must secure resources and markets by force if necessary. But all of that is still to come. For now, in late 1929, there is just the dawning realization that the prosperity of the Roaring Twenties was